This video was brought to you by Squarespace. Fast food burgers. I think Switch 2 is good. I recently put out my full system review. I think for the most part, in terms of hardware quality, power, features, and all that, it's everything I wanted it to be, and in some categories even more. But as I mentioned in that video, it does have one surprising problem that didn't really present itself until I had the thing in my own two hands. The screen. It leaves something to be desired. Now, I didn't want to come to any hasty conclusions, but I did want to get to the bottom of this, so I spent hours doing vigorous research. And by doing research, I mean I watched the Digital Foundry video. You've probably heard of Digital Foundry, especially if you're into tech stuff, but just in case you haven't, these guys do amazing work. They do these performance breakdowns of basically every major game. They're like measuring the frame rates and detailing all the different graphical effects that games and systems utilize. It's perfect for someone like me. I am interested in this stuff, and I know a little bit, but I really don't know that much. So I can absorb the main points, but then it's just fun to hear these guys talk about all this stuff they're just really knowledgeable about. I don't know, it's just really good. Honestly, it is one of the only YouTube channels I regularly watch. So if anyone from the team hears this, just know that I appreciate the heck out of what you do. Anyway, they did their own humongous review breakdown of the Switch 2. Really great watch. And in it, they go over the strengths and weaknesses of the Switch 2 display. It was nice to see that their findings and observations pretty much line up with my own experiences thus far. Like I wasn't imagining all of it. The screen does have some stuff going for it. It really is capable of some vibrant colors. Not quite on the level of the Switch OLED, but definitely better than the original. The colors do tend toward the cooler end of the spectrum, which isn't necessarily a problem. It displays a pretty vibrant image overall. I can't complain too much there. Then the viewing angle is pretty good, and the panel behind the screen is nice and black, so it reflects less light, especially when compared to the original, so that also helps. Before we continue, a quick reminder that this video was brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace makes website building a breeze. Whatever you need, something personal, something for your business, it's all super easy thanks to the intuitive builder. You can format things however you like, embed pictures and video, none of it requires any coding knowledge, and you can even start with a template if you want, just to make it like mega easy. And after no time, you got yourself a slick professional site. My site, Arlo Recommends, is a blog, and Squarespace makes it really simple to just like throw together all my text and pics and links and stuff, schedule everything to auto-publish and auto-generate social media posts, and I am done. They offer a really nice suite of analytics for my perusal, as well as a whole bunch of powerful extensions if I ever need more for my site. To try out Squarespace for yourself, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. Then when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/Arlo to save 10% off your first website or domain. And now for today's recommendation, Stars Are the Light by Moon Duo. Psych rock, a bit on the groovier side. Star Trek to me is Lost Heads. I am hyper-focused on music at the moment, so you're probably gonna get mostly album recommendations for a little while. Hope that's okay. Thanks again to Squarespace. Now please, finish watching the video. But then you start getting into the weaknesses. HDR does not work as Nintendo suggested it would. I honestly can't tell the difference when I toggle it on and off. The OLED launched with Metroid Dread, and that was a really good showcase of deep blacks in particular. Firing the game up on Switch 2, it's clearly not on the same level. The Digital Foundry guys explained that part of the problem is that the display just isn't bright enough to support true HDR. And Nintendo has elected to use one solid backlight panel instead of one with multiple dimming zones. Some displays have tons of small dimming zones, and they can achieve a near HDR effect just by lighting up the screen strategically. But there's nothing like that here. It's just one big old backlight panel. Things get even messier when you output to the TV. Adjusting settings for every game on every TV is a headache. And then the little thing Nintendo gives you to adjust the image, it just does not work properly. The one where you move a slider with a picture of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, it doesn't even tell you what you're changing, so it's really easy to just totally screw up how everything else looks. I've gotten so tired of it all, I just turned off HDR across the board. I'm just kind of done with it. Then you got all these articles about issues with HDR, the one setting you've got to change to stop your image from looking all washed out. This is a far cry from the works out of the box experience that Nintendo usually delivers. But back to the Switch 2 display itself, that's the real issue here. The general consensus seems to be that, for the most part, in terms of color and contrast, the image the Switch 2 puts out is better than the original, worse than the OLED. And I'm fine with that. I really am. I really do think that it's still good enough. Unfortunately, there is one more problem with the screen that's a bit harder to swallow. The Switch 2 screen has this strange ghosting problem. The image leaves a light little trail. Basically, you can see the ghosts of previous frames. This creates a kind of blurry effect. You can't see it in regular game footage. The only way to show what I'm talking about in a video like this is to show footage of a camera pointed at the screen. But when we slow it down or even pause it, you can see what I'm talking about. You can just see several frames at once. I wasn't sure how this compared to the original Switch since, I don't have mine anymore, and I couldn't find straight answers online. I thought maybe I just never noticed the problem back then, and then I was spoiled on the OLED for so many years. But according to the Digital Foundry guys, this is indeed worse than the original. So, of course, the first question we must ask is, why the heck is this happening? I was kind of hoping it would be a software thing, maybe vary from game to game, but now Digital Foundry says it is simply down to the panel itself. The issue isn't just that this is an LCD panel instead of an LED or an OLED. It's that this particular panel has a problem with how quickly its pixels refresh, how fast they can transition from one color to another. Basically, the display is just too slow. It's actually worse than usual for LCD displays, which is weird because what's one of Nintendo's whole things? What was their modus operandi years ago? Lateral thinking with withered technology. Sometimes instead of going with what's shiny and new and expensive, it's better to use something older so you can really nail it, and it's less expensive to produce to boot. But here, despite the advanced age of LCD tech, despite how much better it's gotten over the years, this screen just isn't where it should be. Natural next question then, can anything be done to fix this? Well, unfortunately, since the issue is with the panel itself, the answer is not much. Nintendo certainly isn't gonna spring for a better screen out of the goodness of their heart, and they're not gonna replace any screens either. The Digital Foundry guys mentioned how there's some kind of overdrive function they could potentially utilize. Something of a way to tweak how frames are displayed. It's the kind of thing that would take fine-tuning. It could make things worse if overdone. It might have an effect on battery life. They're not really sure. They say it probably wouldn't affect it too much. I don't know if such a thing is in the cards for Nintendo, if we may see overdrive implemented in a firmware update in the future. I don't think anyone knows for sure. But at least for now, we're just kind of stuck with this problem. The Switch 2 produces kind of a ghosty image. And to be fair, as the guys point out, this isn't the first Nintendo system with a subpar display. Nintendo handhelds have never had great screens. The Wii U screen, the image there was pretty darn dim and flat. And apparently the GBA SP with the backlight had a way worse screen, but no one noticed or cared at all because it looked so vibrant and we could finally play in a dark room without using one of those funky lights. It seems that usually we don't really pay that much attention to this stuff. You get a system and the screen just kind of is the way it is. But this time, it is a bit more evident. I mean, the entire environment has changed dramatically over the years. Other mobile devices, whether it's phones or tablets or other gaming systems, they've really contributed to a higher standard overall. And that includes Nintendo's very own Switch OLED. A significant amount of their customers are going straight from that gorgeous display to this LCD display that does fine with colors, but has this weird ghosting problem. Also, you got the fact that Nintendo is advertising this thing like a premium piece of tech and charging accordingly. Here in the US, it's $150 more than the base model Switch was when it launched, and it's worse in other territories. And their whole marketing thing has been about its power and its features, how great the image quality is. I mean, the thing has a 120 hertz refresh rate. It's capable of displaying 120 frames per second. Yet its pixels don't refresh fast enough to properly display even 60 FPS without noticeable blur. That's ridiculous. A game running at 120 is gonna have like 6 frames of blur behind it. Like, I get that Nintendo has a pretty tough job striking a balance between quality and price. Every little thing has to be considered. Every single individual element that goes into the system comes with a cost and cuts into their potential profit. But when it comes to a handheld that plays games and, like, shows those games being played on its built-in screen, what you see on that screen is pretty darn important. Skimp on some features, fine, I get it. And maybe even skimp on the screen a little bit, but not this far. This is just too much. Obviously, we can't know exactly how much more money a better display would have cost them. Maybe none of this is quite as simple as pay more money to get better quality. Maybe there were particular challenges with this system, but this really does seem like too big a sacrifice to make. It's hard not to wish they'd just sprung for the better tech and eaten the cost, because that's just the cost of doing business. That's what it takes to create a good end user experience. Maybe they could have scaled back in other areas to make up for it. I mean, I certainly don't like that idea. Again, really, we don't know what it would have taken. It's all very complicated, but they should have done something. Now, I do think this is a problem. However, it would be slightly disingenuous to call this a deal breaker or to suggest that this is going to have a huge impact on sales. Personally, it's a slight annoyance at its worst. I don't play handheld very much. When I do, I mostly just notice this problem when coming straight from the TV, and after that, I tend to get used to it pretty quickly. I think I also just kind of unconsciously settle for whatever screen I'm given. Maybe it's all these years of low quality Nintendo screens. It's kind of conditioned me, lowered my standards. Like something about the fact that it's a handheld. Maybe I just naturally don't expect that much. There are always going to be some sacrifices when not playing on a TV, right? And there may be plenty of people who literally don't notice this at all. They may not even see what we're talking about. To them, it doesn't matter one bit. But it may matter to others. It may matter to plenty of people. It may matter to you. Again, with Nintendo charging this much for the system and its games, with all their talk about how great it looks, there may be some people who open up that box, boot up that system, and wonder why the image looks a little blurry. Even if very few people will take this one thing as a reason to wait for the inevitable OLED model, or even to ditch the system entirely, the rest of us will just kinda have to deal with a disappointingly poor image. And considering all the recent controversy, this was not a good time to deliver a subpar experience and to ask everyone to just deal with it. Some of us are going to be using this thing for the next 8 years, for Pete's sake. You couldn't have done just a little better. You were so close. Again, how the games actually look is pretty important. Battery life, the size of the screen, other little features. In the end, there's some wiggle room there, but I think it's reasonable to expect a certain level of screen quality at the very, very least. So yeah, it's disappointing. Everything else about the system is pretty darn great, so it's hard to be too upset about it. But I ain't gonna lie, it's a bummer. But thank you for watching, and thanks again to Digital Foundry for making such amazing content. I put a link to their big Switch 2 breakdown in the description. Definitely go check it out. Oh, actually, there is one more thing to mention, though. One more reason why this display thing is a problem. Apparently, we have reason to believe that the issue can actually spread to other devices. So if anyone experiences that, be sure to let me know in the comments. I was so much more confident in that joke when I wrote it.